Close your eyes. Feel the silence of the Vatican after midnight. The marble halls stand empty. The candles flicker, shadows stretch, and a soft echo of ancient prayers drifts through the air. In that silence, something stirs, a whisper carried from the crypts below. It is said that deep beneath the Vatican lies not just faith, but fear. Tonight, we step into a world few have ever seen. A world guarded not by armies, but by silence itself. For centuries, the Vatican has been a vault, not just for scripture and relics, but for secrets too heavy for the world to bear. Secrets confessed by priests, hidden by popes, and buried by time. One man, a priest who once served behind those walls, claims he saw what no outsider was ever meant to see. His voice trembled when he spoke. "They told me never to open the iron door beneath the library," he said, "because what's buried there isn't holy scripture, it's something older." He described a staircase carved from black marble, spiraling deep beneath the Vatican library. The air grew colder as he descended, each step echoing like a heartbeat. At the bottom, a small chamber, sealed by a gate of rusted iron, waited in the dark. Behind it, he said, lay books bound in leather so old they crumbled at his touch. He opened one, and inside were drawings of things the church had forbidden for centuries. Symbols that predated Christianity, names that were never to be spoken. He realized then, these weren't writings of faith, they were records of fear, of what the Vatican once tried to destroy. And as he turned the final page, he felt it, a presence behind him, watching in the dark. He looked back, but the chamber was empty. Only the faint whisper remained, echoing from the iron gate. Some truths, it said, were never meant to be read. Tonight, we begin his story. Long before the priest descended into the forbidden vaults, the foundations of secrecy had already been laid. The Vatican was never just a city of faith. It was a fortress of knowledge, a guardian of truths too dangerous for the world above. In its earliest centuries, when empires were still rising and falling like tides, popes began collecting documents, scrolls, and relics from every corner of the known world. But some of these were not meant for worship, they were meant for hiding. They called it Archivum Secretum Apostolicum Vaticanum, the secret apostolic archive. But the word secretum did not mean secret as we use it today. It meant private, personal, belonging only to the Pope himself. Over the centuries, however, that meaning began to change. What was once private became forbidden, and what was forbidden became legend. By the 15th century, whispers began to spread about a hidden wing beneath St. Peter's Basilica. Scholars spoke of vaults containing letters from ancient kings, sealed pacts with empires long gone, even scrolls for the library of Alexandria itself. The church denied it, of course, but travelers to Rome told stories of carriages arriving at night, guarded by the Swiss guard, carrying crates bound in iron and marked with the papal seal. In one of those crates, legend says, lay a scroll unlike any other. It was said to describe a time before the flood, a world where men spoke directly to the stars. The popes who read it ordered it sealed immediately, its language not of this earth. Some called it myth. Others believed it was the oldest text in human history. Those who tried to access the archives without permission were quietly removed from the church. Some vanished from history altogether. The walls of the archives were lined not only with knowledge, but with silence. And the silence was enforced. There are doors, one archivist once said, that even cardinals are not allowed to open. The ex-priest had once stood before one of those doors. He remembered the inscription above it, Veritas sub terra, truth lies beneath the earth. As he stared at the Latin words, he realized these archives weren't built to protect the world from sin. They were built to protect the world from knowledge itself. And somewhere deep below, that knowledge was still waiting. The air beneath the Vatican was colder now. The priest could feel the centuries pressing down on him, every breath thick with the dust of time. His candlelight danced across ancient stones, revealing symbols carved long before the church itself. Some were Christian, but others were not. He whispered a prayer, not out of faith but fear, because he had finally found the room the others warned him about. Before him stood a sealed chamber, a door of blackened bronze, etched with Latin words too faint to read. He pressed his hand against the surface, and it moved. Slowly, the gate opened with a groan, the sound echoing through the vault like a dying hymn. Inside, a faint light shimmered, blue, cold, and unnatural. He stepped inside. The chamber was circular, small, and impossibly old. At its center, a stone altar. Upon it rested a glass container filled with parchment fragments suspended in oil. Symbols covered the walls, suns, eyes, and spirals, repeating again and again, as if warning anyone who entered. The priest recognized none of it, but as he looked closer, the patterns began to move. He blinked, and the symbols seemed to shimmer like living fire. They pulsed with rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. The candle flickered, and he heard it, a low hum rising from the walls themselves. It wasn't sound. It was something deeper, a vibration resonating inside his bones, whispering words in a language no man should understand. He turned to flee, but something caught his eye. On the back of the altar was a symbol, the same one carved into his childhood Bible, hidden behind the cross. It connected everything. The Vatican, the flood, the stars above. He realized then, the church had not been hiding sin. It had been hiding origin. He stumbled backward, clutching his rosary. The hum grew louder, the air alive with whispers. And then silence. The candle went out. In the dark, a voice, calm, ancient, spoke behind him. You have seen what should remain unseen. He fell to his knees. When he awoke, he was back above ground, and the gate was sealed again. After that night, the priest could no longer sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw the symbols, the suns, the eyes, the spirals, spinning in silence behind his eyelids. He began to study them in secret, comparing them to ancient manuscripts and forbidden texts. And slowly, the impossible began to reveal itself. The symbols in that underground chamber were not Christian at all. They belonged to something far older. Across the world, in the ruins of Mesopotamia, the same spirals had been carved into stone tablets, thousands of years before the birth of Christ. In Egypt, the same eye appeared beside depictions of the sun god Ra. And in forgotten temples of South America, the same markings were etched into the walls, aligned perfectly with the stars. What he saw in the Vatican's depths was not faith. It was memory, a memory of a civilization that predated every scripture on earth. The deeper he searched, the more he found traces of a hidden continuity, the same God under different names, the same light under different symbols. In one forgotten manuscript, he found a drawing labeled Lux Primordialis, the first light. The note beneath it read, carried by the watchers, guarded by the church. He realized the church had not destroyed the old gods. It had hidden them within its own walls. And then came the name he feared most, one he had seen carved in the altar below. Ormday, the golden god, a figure described in Sumerian, Egyptian, and even early Christian texts, always depicted as a bringer of light, knowledge, and rebellion. Could the church's greatest secret be the same, being once worshipped as a god, and later condemned as a fallen angel? The priest's research led him to a single conclusion, one that shook his faith to its core. The Vatican's archives were not just protecting history. They were rewriting it. Each symbol, each artifact, each erased scripture pointed to a single truth, that the story of light and darkness began long before religion. And perhaps it was never about heaven or hell at all. He understood now why they sealed the chamber, why the Vatican guarded silence above all else. Because if the world ever learned what lay beneath those stones, it would question everything. That night, the priest closed his books, placed his rosary beside them, and whispered a prayer into the dark. "Forgive me," he said, "for what I now believe." Silence has always been the Vatican's greatest weapon. Not swords, not armies, but silence, pure, unwavering, centuries deep. It is a silence that swallows names, erases books, and replaces truth with ritual. For more than 1,000 years, it has kept the church untouched, its mysteries hidden beneath hymns and marble. The priest began to trace the history of that silence, from the Inquisition to the modern day. During the Middle Ages, when scholars began to ask forbidden questions, they disappeared into prisons called the cells of doctrine. Their books were burned, their names erased. Among them were men who had studied symbols identical to those beneath the basilica. They claimed to have found evidence of the first light, the being of knowledge the priest now knew as Aurum Dei. None of them were ever seen again. The priest discovered letters written by a cardinal in the 1600s, sealed, never delivered. They spoke of a secret council convened by the Pope to decide what knowledge humanity was ready to receive. The rest was locked away in the archive's deepest vault, the Apostolicum Inferius, the lower archive, a place even the archivists were forbidden to enter. Centuries passed. The church modernized, the world moved on, but the archive remained unchanged. Even as revolutions shook Europe, even as libraries burned, the Vatican's vaults stayed untouched. There are records of popes personally ordering entire texts removed from public archives, writings that mention the Watchers, the Golden God, or the ancient language of light. To this day, those documents are missing. When the priest shared his findings with another clergyman, the reaction was swift. His superior told him to stop. "There are things," he said quietly, "that even the church must not speak aloud." Within a week, the priest's quarters were emptied. His research vanished. The Vatican declared him mentally unfit for service. And yet he survived, because someone inside wanted the story to live. The priest fled Rome under the cover of night, carrying only one book, a torn volume from the secret archives. On its final page, written in the faintest ink, were words that still haunt historians today. The light was given once. It shall return, and when it does, even the church shall tremble. For centuries, that sentence has never been spoken aloud inside Vatican walls. Until now, years passed. The priest never returned to the Vatican. He lived in quiet exile somewhere beyond Rome, in a small monastery surrounded by cypress trees and silence. Every night, he lit a single candle and read from the torn pages he had saved. His voice grew softer with time, his memory fading. But the symbols, the light, never left his mind. In his final letter, he wrote of dreams, of descending once more beneath the basilica, walking barefoot through corridors of light. They were waiting, he said, not in anger, but in patience. He described voices speaking in harmony, not words, but tones, resonating with his heartbeat. "I understood then," he wrote, "that truth is not something the church can own. It is something the soul remembers." When the monks found his room the next morning, the candle had burned to its end. The torn book lay open on the desk, the ink glimmering faintly as if alive. And beside it, a single phrase written in Latin, "Lux primordialis vivit." The first light lives. The Vatican denied everything, of course. They claimed the priest had been delusional, his writings symbolic and unverified. Yet a few years later, a group of workers restoring a hall near St. Peter's reported finding an iron gate beneath the floor, sealed shut, marked with a spiral. Within a week, it was covered again. Today, the archive still stands. Millions of pages lie in darkness, untouched by time, guarded by silence. And somewhere, beneath the basilica, the chamber remains, waiting. Some say the hum can still be heard through the walls on certain nights. Others say the light never went out, but no one dares to open the gate again. So tonight, as the bells of the Vatican toll across the sleeping city, close your eyes and listen. The sound you hear may not be the bells at all, but the echo of that ancient hum calling across centuries, reminding us that beneath faith, beneath fear, beneath all we are told to believe, There's still something waiting in the dark. Something the priest once called the first light. Sleep well.